everyone. I am so happy you're here. My name is Cassie. And listen, everywhere I am all about helping you to create healthy habits, overcome obstacles, and grow so that you can accomplish your goals and build the best life for you. So make sure that you subscribe to this channel because I am always down to give you practical, real advice and guidance about exactly how to navigate things super well to get where you want to go. Now, today we're going to have a super tough conversation. I'm going to be talking about control, what exactly you can control, and how to let go of the other stuff. Now, I'm basically a pro at this. I am like pro level all the way at controlling everything around me, or trying to, needing to, staying up all night, trying to figure out how to make everything go just perfectly so that I can meet everybody's expectations and nobody will be disappointed in me and I won't lose my cool and it won't be miserable, and trying to just, okay, I'm sure you guys get the picture. So I am the oldest child, okay, ding, in a family of 5, ding, ding. And I also am the mom of 5 kids in a blended family. 2 of my kids have special needs. I actually do not remember a time I wasn't an adult, period. I grew up with teen parents. And so I very much felt like, listen, my perception of this growing up was that I was in charge, meaning that I needed to be the parent, that I needed to look after my siblings, that I needed to look after my parents, that I needed to be pleasing, that I needed to not ruffle any feathers, that I needed to manage everybody else's emotions, right? My parents, when I was growing up, were relatively volatile, and I spent a lot of time tiptoeing around them and just trying to keep them pleased and satisfied and calm. Okay. I also am the victim of sexual assault and domestic violence. And so I have had a lot of experiences in my life that very much tell me that it is really dangerous for me to not control everything, right? That this is not just you feel a little uncomfortable, that this could be a life and death danger situation. It is incredibly stressful and difficult to control all the things. Okay. And so it took me a really long time to figure this out. And that's why I'm talking to you about it today, right? What can you really control? Now, I remember that I never thought that I had an issue with this, just to be honest. I didn't think I was trying to control things. I thought I was really mellow. I thought I was super go with the flow and very, very chill. And then I realized not so much. So I'm just going to ask you about a few things I noticed that were really strong indications that I had issues with control. Okay. One is I was incredibly concerned about other people's opinions of me, and I was a no plan people pleaser, right? Why? Because it was really important to me to be able to control the opinions of others. 2, I was incredibly, like extremely, I can't even think of a word that's big enough for it, hyper vigilant about everything, but especially events and holidays and things like that. I had really high anxiety about them, really high expectations for myself in them, and a high degree of perfectionism, right? Every holiday needed to go perfect. I needed to do it right. I needed to predict anything that could go wrong so that I could prevent it from going wrong or be on the ready to fix it when it did happen. Because I needed to control everything that was happening in my bubble and in my family and in my event, even if it wasn't my event technically, right? And number 3 is I was really easily emotionally triggered. Now, do not get this twisted. All right. Because yes, I am sensitive. And yes, I tend to be an empath. Okay. This is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is any time that I was in a environment with other people, especially family, that I actually would have this experience that everybody had a problem with me, that I needed to fit in, that I needed to do things right so that I could fit in. I would feel like I was being criticized all the time. Sometimes I was. Sometimes I was, right? And I would try to stop people from doing this to me. I'd become very, very anxious, very upset, and very unsettled by the feeling that this was happening, right? I've talked a lot about feeling like the black sheep in my family. And so I always felt like the target. Now, my family can be really, my family can be very sarcastic. My family can be very playful in the way of kind of poking fun. And by the way, it's an equal opportunity poking fun that goes on in my family. But I always felt like it was very much directed at me. I would be very easily triggered. I would spend a lot of time either thinking or saying, "What's that supposed to mean? What is that supposed to mean?" And by the way, that's not an uncommon thing in my family either. So that's really problematic. And that's a way in which I was triggered. Now, listen, I'm not a person who tends to get angry when I'm triggered. I tend to withdraw. Sometimes I'll get emotional, like I will cry or be upset in that way. But the biggest thing is that for many, many years, I only saw or spoke to my family on holidays, basically Easter and Christmas, because I was so triggered, right? And the reason I was triggered is because I couldn't control the way that they were treating me, how they were talking to me, I couldn't control any of that. And it was painful for me, right? So these were some pretty good indications that I had a high, high, high need for control. So ask yourself, are you a people pleaser or afraid of other people's opinions? Do you tend to be hyper vigilant, a perfectionist, or anxious about events or holidays? And are you easily triggered? And that doesn't just mean you yell at people, that might mean you get emotional, you withdraw, you feel targeted. Okay. If those things are true for you too, you might struggle with a need to control things. Now, here's why this is problematic, because I also didn't, when I realized this, I was like, but it's not a problem because now I know what I need to control so that I can feel better. Okay. Now I know. But the problem was I kept trying to control things that are actually not within my control. And so here's where the rubber really hits the road. There is one and only one thing that you can control, and that is you. You are the only thing that's within your control. Your children are not within your control. Your husband isn't. Your partner isn't. Your family isn't. The circumstances are not. These things are not within your control. Okay. You can control you. And part of controlling you is learning how to be responsive rather than reactive. In a lot of cases, I will say that the hypervigilance that I experienced helped me transition. I don't think that personal development coaches are supposed to say that, but it is true. The hypervigilance that I had helped me transition into being less controlling of what was outside of me. My ability to be empathic and to predict what other people were going to do and say and what was likely to happen, my ability to see patterns in what happened typically in these events made it a lot easier for me to, before I was in this situation, make choices for myself so that I could be less reactive and more responsive. It made it easier for me to set boundaries with people, and it made it easier for me to set healthy, loving boundaries with myself. So, coming to a space where I would ask myself some key questions, okay, when I would start to get really concerned about how an event went, okay, or somebody else's problem, or some situation that I was like, I'm just going to fix this, right? is I would ask myself this, or something I felt responsible for, or people pleasing, right? Where I was like, well, I feel like I have to tell them yes, even though I don't have time. Because, okay, the question I would ask myself is this: is this mine? Is this mine? Because here's the thing, the only thing I can control is me. And if it's not mine, it's optional, right? If it's mine, I need to deal with it. But if it's not mine, it's completely optional. It's 100% optional. Okay. Because then I get to make the choice that's best for me if it's not mine. Maybe I want to do it because maybe I value the relationship. I want to build intimacy. I want to show up for that person. That's possible. Maybe the event is at my house, and so I can create some, house rules or boundaries about what happens at the event. I have some, for example, at Thanksgiving. Maybe the kids are mine. Okay. If the kids are mine, then I actually can say, hey, it's not cool for you to do that with my kids. Right. Then the next thing I would ask myself is what can I do about it? What do I want the outcome to be and what can I do about it? Okay. So, really thinking about these two things in tandem matters a lot. And the reason is I don't actually make threats, I just communicate what's going to happen. Okay. I do not threaten people, but I do communicate what's going to happen. And I need to know that the outcome is something that I'm going to be okay with, right? I need to know that it's worth doing that. Does this make sense? Because a lot of times when you're trying not to control other situations, but you are creating boundaries. I have boundaries about myself, about my home, about my partner, about my kids, right? There are certain things that I'm not trying to control what my sister says to my child or what my brother says to my husband. Okay. But I am going to be responsive if this goes sideways. Right. And I'm going to make that choice for myself. I'm going to make that choice. So, what would I get if I tried to control the small, minor details, right? If every time someone said the slightest thing, I was incredibly reactive or I reacted disproportionately, right? What would I get out of that? Now, this really comes into play in a lot of places with ex partners, right? So we have a blended family. Our three oldest kids are from my husband's first marriage. Okay. They all lived with us. They were all raised in our household. They had a very unique visitation situation. I'm not even getting into that right now. But when we wanted to communicate certain things to their biological mother, you have to think about what would be the point of this, right? Like I can say, or my husband can say, my partner can say to his ex wife, I don't like the kids staying up until 11 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday, right? That's not their bedtime at home. It creates issues in the week. Okay. Now, to think about this, is this a hill I want to die on, though? So what's the point? If I say that, is she likely to understand this and to comply with this? Or do I need to create a different kind of boundary? Or do I need to let this one go? Because I can't control every detail here. I can give feedback, but I'm not actually willing to enact a real um, change in my behavior because of this, right? So, or I can't enact a real change. This is a very, very common thing, especially in blended families. It's like, what's the point in telling my ex that I don't want the kids staying up past 9 on their time? It's not like I could say, or they're not coming there. They're still coming. And if my ex is particularly vindictive and I know that telling them that this is problematic means he's going to keep them up till midnight, why am I going to tell him? Right. So then you're controlling yourself. How much do I want to tell them? When do I want to tell them? And why? What am I hoping to get out of this? Is it worth it? Is what I'm hoping to get out of this worth what I'm doing right now? Because you can't control them, right? What you're saying to them isn't going to control them. So, really thinking about, is my action, the only thing I can control here, going to get me what I'm hoping to get? Okay. If you're really hypervigilant and that's part of your control dynamic, you probably already know the answer to that question because usually when people are hypervigilant, they do know that. Now, mind you, give that person the benefit of the doubt though, because sometimes when we're hypervigilant, we tend to imagine that, the other person's going to be really mad. It's going to be a lot of conflict. In reality, a lot of times it's not. But really thinking about, is this important enough to me? Is this important enough to me to even have this conversation? Because the only thing I can control is me. That's it. I can only control me. Okay. And then when it comes to triggers or being triggered, it took me a really long time to recognize that the reason why I was feeling triggered by some of these things is because of my own insecurity. And the work that needed to be done was not for me to control what other people said about me. It was for me to build my own self confidence and my own self esteem. Because the reality of the situation is when there is playful jabbing going on about my parenting style, for example, and I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? The reason I'm thinking that is because I'm sensitive about that, right? If you said something to me that I didn't believe, like I'm 5'4", y'all. Okay. So if somebody walked up to me and they were like, wow, you're so tall, you're practically the Jolly Green Giant, I'd be like, what? Right? If somebody walked up to me and said, dang, you've really gotten up there. Like I would, okay, this is by the way a perfect example. If somebody said, wow, you've really gotten up there, I would never think that they meant I'd gotten taller. I would think that they meant I'd gotten older, right? Because am I insecure about being too tall? No. But am I aware that I'm 50 and I'm getting older? You bet. Right? You bet. And so the first thing I would think is that they were talking about my age, not my height. Correct? Okay. So when people make comments, I think that they're talking about the thing that I feel a little tender about. And that's why it hits my buttons. My buttons are exposed. I've exposed them. Okay. I have not done the work. I have open wounds that people can accidentally get that little bit of lemon juice in. Okay. It's not because they're trying to hurt me. And so when I can recognize, oh, wow, that felt a way to me. I must have a little work to do there. And I can control that. And I can make the choice to do that work. And I can make the choice to recognize that it's not about them, that it's about me. That matters. That matters. And it makes a profoundly huge difference. I am very, very rarely triggered by other people. Usually, when other people say things to me, I will think, I didn't know I had a tender spot there. I think I'm going to need to work on something, right? Or B, I didn't know you had a tender spot there. Because a lot of the things people say and do, it actually comes from their own insecurity. They're projecting that, right? I feel insecure about my own parenting, so I'm going to make a little dig about yours. So usually anything that we're triggered by in that way is revealing one way or another. Now, obviously, things that trigger us because we feel unsafe, genuinely unsafe. As I told you, I have a lot of circumstances in my history that cause a legitimate safety concern, right? Where I have PTSD and my brain is like, this is wildly dangerous. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But where it is, okay, here's what I'm going to tell you. Where it is, obviously, it's always okay to communicate a boundary and say, hey, I'm really uncomfortable. Okay. I, for example, am very uncomfortable with being around other people who are having fights. I am very uncomfortable with feeling trapped somewhere. I am very uncomfortable with certain types of fighting, right? Things like that. And it's fine to say, like, that doesn't feel safe for me and I can't engage in that. Just letting you know. That doesn't feel safe to me. I can't engage in that. If that's going on, I'm going to have to leave. Totally cool. Okay. It's also fine to be like, and I'm not coming back because this keeps happening. and this feels unsafe to me. I do want to recommend that if you have big T or little t ongoing trauma, big T trauma period, little t ongoing trauma, where you feel like you are triggered to a place of I don't feel safe. Okay, not necessarily a place of that hurt my feelings, but I don't feel safe. That if you haven't sought therapy, please seek therapy. If you have sought therapy, please consider trauma informed therapy or specific trauma therapy like EMDR. It can make all the difference in the world. Okay. It is very, very important that we not waste our very, very precious resources, our time, our energy on trying to control the circumstances or the people around us. I know that this can be incredibly difficult, but at the end of the day, the only thing that you can control is you. That's it. That's all you can control, you. Okay. And if you have toddlers, you can't even control your own child. You know that. They're going to have tantrums when they're going to have tantrums. Maybe they'll clean up, maybe they won't. Maybe they'll eat peas, who knows? You know that you can't actually exert full control over them. But what you can do is make choices about your own behaviors, thoughts, right? And feelings. You can make choices about how you express those things. You can make choices about where it's safe to do that and maybe where it's not so safe to do that. You can make choices about the boundaries that you set for yourself and other people. That's what you can do. Okay. And so that is what I encourage you to work on as we come into this holiday season. Now, if you're working on this boundaries thing and you're like, Cassie, I seriously need help. One, I'm going to talk about this more as we go through this next set. Again, be sure that you subscribe because I have a big unit on boundaries and boundaries even in dysfunctional family situations to really help you create the boundaries that you need for these events and for other people, but also to create the boundaries for yourself, where it's very quick and simple to be like, this is not good for me and I'm going to leave. I can't control you. I can't make you stop saying those things. I can't make you stop doing that thing. I can't make you right because you can't. I can't make this holiday perfect. I can't but what I can choose to do is these things. And that is how I will maintain control for myself, because the only thing that you can control is you. That's all you got. All right. Do not forget to subscribe to this channel. Let me know in the comments if you have very specific things or any questions about how to relinquish control or how to set better boundaries. And I promise you that I will use those comments to inform my content as we get into Boundary Week, because I have a big set of things on boundaries coming up. And if I've already created the boundary videos and you're just now watching this, don't worry, because this is a topic that always needs to be revisited. I will make sure that I answer your questions or create more videos in a series that explain better boundaries and exercising your own personal control to make that easier for you. Alrighty, I will see you next time. Again, don't forget to subscribe. And by the way, share your videos with your friends or family. Share these videos if you love them and they help you. Bye, everyone.